All right, this is one that I actually don't know if I have it on my channel. I would have to double check. I know I did one for, I think, for Urza and I think I did one for Urza and Zoro, and then Gray and Estet. I'm probably gonna do those ones again and probably talk a little bit more in depth over them. But I figured that this would be fun just to go over as well. I'm trying to get just also generally some more widespread reaction content on the channel amongst my normal content, because I want to make sure I have a good amount that I put out there for people just in general. Like I want to have free stuff. And obviously I have to do stuff for memberships, but I feel like I should get a good amount of stuff first where everybody can see it. They can see if they like my opinions when it comes to reaction content. And obviously, like, if you're not, you just want to stick to the normal stuff, that's perfectly fine too. Well, I just had it open with like a day one. It's so much brighter. I have like my YouTube thing still in day mode. Let me pull up another thing. There we go. Much better lighting. Actually, let me scroll up. There's a picture of Irene. I can have that in the background. Just bright enough to keep a little bit of the luminescence on me. But yeah, so this is like, what, like, how old is this video? I think this came out 8 years ago, 9 years ago. I remember where I was when I watched this video and I watched the Urza video. I don't remember where I was specifically when it comes to the Gray and Estent one. I remember for Natsu and Ace, it was like right after deployment, or like partially, I think actually in it might have been in Travel From, and I'm trying to remember the exact dates just off the top of my head. I remember where I was. I think it was in San Diego. Well, I can't say 100%. I believe I was in San Diego at the time. But I remember where it was in the arc, because Urza versus Zoro, I believe, came out after, if I recall correctly, and it came out in like December, I think, of that same year. I know because it was right around when Urza was fighting Irene in the manga. So just because, why I'm bringing it up, it's important to obviously bring up before we get into the video that we would use feats and acknowledgments of the characters at the time of, because things obviously change. Natsu is far stronger than he is at this point when this video came out, right now. And you can do just backscaling for Ace off of characters, because it's like he's a character that died obviously before the time skip, but there's still like a level of just kind of bare minimum things that obviously he would have from his position as, the second commander. Second, right? Yeah, because I think Josu's third, Marco's first, believe so. Yeah, for the Whitebeard Pirates. And on top of that, obviously, like he was a warlord even before that, so he has to have at least general kind of positions of strength. And and he fought Jinbei for, what was it, like 10 days. So there's a strong precedence where he, even though he doesn't have the on-screen feats, he does get scaled by a lot of stuff post time skip and like arcs after, up into a point where you can make an argument for him. But obviously we're going to be talking about just at the time of, and at the point of this, I'm trying to think of where One Piece was, when this came out. I think Whole Cake Island. I know that generally kind of some areas, because I know it was Dressrosa started like right when Tartaros was going underway, so it should be somewhere, around like Whole Cake, I believe, off the top of my head. Not obviously as important. I don't think either of them really get anything really that crazy when it comes to just general scaling around those times, from besides of what we already knew. So you already had well into Alvarez Natsu, and then Ace, who still gets stuff from, say, like Dressrosa and whatnot. So pretty much, I mean, I would say like definitely like going off it, you could definitely say that he, Ace, when he was still alive, could fight Doflamingo. I'd be willing to bet there are people that would argue, that he would win, or the people that say Doflamingo would win, but that's not something we're doing for the video. I would say for sure that there's like a relative idea where you could say after the time of that, like Luffy, gear forth, fresh into it, and Ace were still comparable. So that's something that I wanted to bring up, obviously, going into the video, and we'll talk a little bit about it. Also, one thing, obviously, I know Death Battle. The thing about Death Battle is Like ultimately they go for views. I mean, they're making content. They're not trying to be as on point exact every time. I remember, for instance, I believe, like, I can't say 100% again because I would have to pull up the video and rewatch it. I'm not doing that right now. I remember it was after Goku versus Superman the second time. They're like, we're not going to do this again because even if Goku gets a stronger form, there's obviously stronger versions of Superman out there, and we haven't even used the strongest Superman. And then they ended up using another one, and they brought up like Superman Prime and Ultra Instinct Goku, and it's like, you guys say you weren't doing it again. Anyway, but you can tell when they do research. Like, for instance, when they did the initial Goku versus Superman, they went into like scaling like how big Snake Way is by like, oh yeah, based off Goku's height here, and then apply it to the width of Snake Way and what we see at Snake Way, and then based off of how long it takes Goku to go this distance and what we know of blah blah. Like they went into clearly what would take a good amount of research and information to find the details to see where the characters are in terms of like their capabilities. Whereas with Natsu, there's stuff that they just kind of skip over. I know, like for Urza, like again at the point of Urza versus Zoro when they were doing it, it was near the end of Alvarez, and they like stopped Urza's feats like when she pierced the cube in her fight with Kyoka. They didn't even go all the way through Tartaros, which was really weird. And then in like, for instance, in here they call Natsu a bounty hunter. I'm gonna have to remember. I'll bring it up literally so I can timestamp it if anybody wants to correct me on that. I remember that very specifically. They call Natsu a bounty hunter, and it's like, sort of, not really. It's not like he exclusively goes after people with bounties. Like, it's like they'll occasionally have a mission where they'll go after a criminal, but that's only something that they can pick and choose from. Like, there's like times where they're like, yeah, go hang out with Yajima and help at his restaurant, and it's like, yeah, bounty hunter's not out there serving food. I know he's not great at it, but anyway, we'll get into it. I'm gonna skip over obviously like the smaller parts, like when they kind of do transitions. The main thing obviously before we get into the fight, and probably what I want to talk about most, like, I'm gonna probably, what I want to kind of go with is like, we'll watch their kind of just general like just information on Natsu, and then I'll listen to the one with Ace. I just don't really know if I'm gonna have as much commentary when it comes to Ace, because at least from what I can tell, they, like, the people on the team actually know about One Piece, where it's like I can very much tell they don't know that much about Fairy Tail. And just again, before we even get into the video and I give an example of this, just for something for anybody who's here who's more of a One Piece person that wants to try and make an argument for it before you even think about it, and this is something I believe is not even brought up in the video, is because Natsu is a fire dragon slayer, and it's not even just as a dragon slayer, it's any type of slayer, they can touch their element. So Natsu can touch fire like it's physical matter. So Ace's whole Logia intangibility doesn't matter in this case, because obviously, like, you know, if you went up and tried to swing a sword at him or stab him, he's going to turn into fire. But for Natsu, what is like, you know, just energy to other people, he can physically grab the fire, so Ace turning into the fire doesn't do anything. And that's one of the reasons I always say, like, putting a slayer up against somebody of their own attribute is a terrible idea. And there's a couple other things I'm going to bring up in the video, but I'll wait until we actually get to it. I'm like 8 minutes into it, but I feel like when it comes down to it, people are going to want to come to this video to see more of my breakdown of it and less of me being like, oh, I'm shocked at what happens, because obviously I've already seen it. It's more so like I want to give more of an in-depth kind of go by for each of them, and we'll kind of like comment as things go. I'm not going to comment too much when it comes to them doing calculations. I don't even really want to bother with that too much. I'll kind of talk about more of why it's kind of pointless to even bring it up, and we'll get to it when we get there. But let's kind of get to it. I already skipped to kind of just where they get to the start and where they just kind of talk about the characters. Obviously, they're just bringing, oh, fire characters. Oh, hang on. I got to turn on the audio a little bit. See, it's one of those things where it starts out fine, and they're just like talking about this, the general information about him. But I'll point it out when we kind of get to more of just like the bits of the characters that make me go, okay, you guys didn't do a lot of work. Oh, hang on. Did I turn it down too much? Or did I accidentally hit anything with my headphones? There we go. Oh, there's something about like Natsu dying. Well, he did die, and then stuff where Zeref did. See, one thing too that's really weird is they don't bring up anything about his Aetherius powers. And they usually will include all powers, including ones that aren't characters can't access fully at will, but it's something they can do. Because Natsu can get to the point of his Aetherius powers, but it's not something he activates at will, but it can occur. Because it's really weird, because they'll do stuff. I'll wait until in between when we get to the Ace part to talk about it, because it's just one of the things that, oh my god. This is something really fast. And it's like stuff like this too. It's like you can tell this is a very fan trans scan because of how dark it is. Like Igneal is almost just black. Like this is obviously like this was like years and years and years ago. So it's I don't put it to this part against them, but obviously they're using fan translations and they're not using anything official, which is to me is like the weird thing. It's like when they would do this is I'm pretty sure the digital volumes were all available at the time, and they're like a bit, you know, even like, you know, when this came out they were a pretty big YouTube channel, so it's like I feel like they could easily put the money, you know, towards official volumes, or at least even find scanlated volumes and go with those. It's just a small thing. I just always think that stuff like that is funny. It's like watching it's like when you watch somebody who does a reaction video, and then it's like you have guys that will watch it off the official websites and do have like an official account, and then you'll have guys that watch it off pirated websites, and it's always just funny to me because it's like, yeah, do it. I mean, but at the same time it's just funny to see still. It's an older time, obviously. Yeah, that's talking about old Igneal. So it's not motion sickness easily, it's the fact that also that height is way off. That's like Natsu early on in the series. He gets a good chunk taller after the time skip into Alvarez, and you can see it when he's standing next to Lucy. But it's not gets motion sickness easily, it's a Dragon Slayer thing. And that's one of the things that obviously like they don't know. They probably just watched the first few episodes and that's it. It's not really a time machine, it's a gate. No, that's not really true also. He wasn't trapped in the future, he was sent there for their mission. Again, it's one of those things, it's like, come on, man. They already gave spoilers at the start, so it's like, I'm willing to bet they didn't even get that far. It's not like a no spoilers thing. Okay, there you go. Okay, cool. I was like trying to remember that. Like, obviously, like I said, I don't remember the full details of like their video and specifics. Yeah, they mercenaries, they're not mercenaries. Yeah, bounty hunter, right there, hang on. That was at like, what, like 315? They call him a mercenary and a bounty hunter? Come on. That's what I mean, though. It's like, you can, like, you know, they wrote a description of what they do, like, on the Wikipedia, or someone just described it. See, this is another thing. This is another thing, too. One thing that Death Battle does, and I said I was going to wait a little bit, but obviously it's like, this is a really good example, is they will mention things and then not use them, or they will mention something as like, oh, they can't do this, or, you know, they'll bring up a variable and it won't be something they bring into the fold, or it's something that they can't normally do and then they bring it in. It's very circumstantial a lot of the time. Obviously at this point, Natsu couldn't use Dragon Force at will. We didn't really see him do it all the way until the point of when he used it with Zareth near the end, which is what, this was like chapter 5. I want to say 531. Was it 532? It's obvious. Oh gosh. I believe it's 530, 531. I'll correct myself later. Obviously right now we don't need it. I'll do it while I'm talking. But it's always weird to me that it's like they didn't end up just like using it, or it's like, why even bring it up if you're not going to use it, kind of thing. I've always been confused by that, just from a analytical standpoint. But again, it's one of those things, like I mentioned, and I'm sure anybody here who's watched other Death Battle videos knows what I'm talking about. It's like when they talked about another one really fast is like Gara and Toph. Is they used Toph when she was older and used feats and stuff when she was older, but then they used like, you know, Kid Toph from The Last Airbender, and then they brought up Gara, but I believe they specifically used, no, I believe that they mentioned the One Tails, the Shukaku, but they didn't use it. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. It's one of the two where they either brought up that he didn't have it, and then yeah, it was 531 by the way. Either they brought it up and then didn't use it, or they brought it up, or sorry, they showed specifically a version of Gaara that didn't have it but used it anyway. I know they do stuff like that all the time. And it's like one of my irks with them is like it's like why even bring it up anyway. Yeah, obviously it's just a big old flame roar, obviously. Another thing too is they don't at least from what I'm aware, and maybe they'll come up at some point and I'll get corrected, but dragon fire is very different as normal fire. We know that for a fact. Natsu doesn't even feel regular fire as hot. Like, we know this from when he fought Zankro. And this is, let me see this really quick right now, because they bring up the fact that he can replenish magic by eating fire, but they don't bring up the fact that he can push through, you know, essentially limit breaks by eating a certain amount of fire. Because we know, obviously, at this point, like I said, Natsu couldn't use Dragon Force at will, but there's always the fact that if he consumes enough fire or enough powerful fire, he will go right into Dragon Force. See, why do they even bring up stuff like Dragon Force and then they don't even really bring it into it? That's just a weird thing for me to even kind of like think about again when it comes to their videos. See, and then they say this. They say like his strongest mode, but Dragon Force even at this point is stronger than Fire Dragon King mode. Really fast. Just really fast. Just as a thing. For this Lightning Flame Dragon mode, we don't know an idea of when it comes to the multipliers and strength boost for each of the forms. We can say, just based off of an idea, that like Lightning Flame Dragon mode is probably like somewhere between, I'm estimating 2 to 4, maybe 5 times, because generally fusion magic isn't just like 1 and 1 makes 2. It's more of like a 1 and 1 combines and then somehow makes 3. It's kind of like how with Yu-Gi-Oh, like you'll take 2 monsters and their attack points fused, but there's no like mathematical reason of why they result in a different number. It's just kind of like a compatibility thing. And with his Fire Dragon King mode, you can make an argument for the fact that Natsu in base at the start of the time skip going into Alvarez, he was able to melt about a mile-wide stadium in Crocus, whereas when it came to Natsu's Fire Dragon King mode, he evaporated about a 50-mile-wide lake. So you can say, like, in theory, obviously, about a 50 times power-up. And again, this is something that I'm more estimating. It's not official. At the time of, you know, if we went by Dragon Force from just back in the Erasion Caesar, Natsu was saying he grew 2 to 3 times stronger at least. I know some translations you see it as 2 to 3 fold. It depends on what you want to go with. But with the officials, obviously this was something that happened a bit after when this video came out. We know that Natsu should be at least somewhere around 200-300 plus, because we know that Lost Aspect multiplies the magic of a spell by several hundred, and Natsu and Gray at the time were equal in base, and Natsu was able to do more against a higher form of Zeref than what Gray was going to do. So you can easily put at a bare minimum, Dragon Force is 200, 300, 400. It's several hundred, so it's more than 2, but I think it's less than 7. I think it's either more than 2, less than 9, or more than 2, less than 7 by the definition. So it's somewhere around like 300 to like either, you know, 6, 7, maybe 800. And obviously, I'm not a huge guy on multipliers. It depends. Like the only time I really am not a big guy on multipliers is when people like try and crazily stack them, kind of like with like how Dragon Ball ends up doing. Just because I feel like that kind of just gets a little silly when you think about certain levels to it, but more of like, I feel like they're not really consistent. But when you kind of like look, obviously here, even from a narrative standpoint, you know Dragon Force is the strongest one because it's also brought up as the ultimate state of a Dragon Slayer. And the reason that is like the hybrid mode, you're essentially using two magics at the same time. They're fusing together to create, again, a hybrid. With Fire Dragon King mode, it's more so kind of like Sting and Rogue having like their White and Shadow drives, where it's essentially a further augmented version of just what you can do already. It's why it's like, oh, Natsu's fire gets hotter. He doesn't get scales, but he has almost like a kind of dragon-esque fire shape appearance to him. Whereas Dragon Force, the way that Dragon Force works is because naturally a Dragon Slayer will advance and progress until they eventually become a dragon, but a Dragon Slayer using Dragon Force will go further in that progress temporarily. It's like when you think about it, regularly, Dragon Slayers are like Pokemon, where they'll reach a stage, they'll evolve, and they can't go back. And when they use Dragon Force, they're like a Digimon, where they will become much more powerful, but once they run out, they pretty much burn themselves out, and they'll just pretty much revert to base. And unless they can gain power fast back, they're done for the fight. So this is just, again, one of those things with them that's like, I know that they didn't do a lot of research. As again, even at the time of when it's like, well, Natsu, this was the strongest form Natsu could achieve at will, Natsu still had the ability to achieve Dragon Force through consumption of fire, which again, fighting somebody like Ace, even though Natsu couldn't just pop it out, it's something that logically could occur, even if he can't just do it when he wants to. So let's just kind of keep going with this. I don't really want to talk about see, again, that's when I was saying like his strongest. That's another thing too. He wasn't in Fire Dragon King mode when he did that. He went in and he just did some attacks. And this is something like, I feel like, again, if you read the series and paid attention, you would know Natsu can use Fire Dragon King moves outside of Fire Dragon King mode, but Fire Dragon King mode is obviously where the big moves come from. You know, it's I feel like if you don't read it, that can be a little confusing if you don't watch it, but it's something that you should know if you're going to use a character, you know, and try and go into depth details. But this was also like Natsu not even really kind of putting in his max effort, because on top of this, and this is something obviously they don't mention, but it's like Natsu still had his secret move up his sleeve with like the portion of power that Ignia left him. See, like they're using stuff from chapter 1. That's another thing too, just from that. And, you know, it's like when they use feats like this because they just probably saw a clip, they act like this is like peak Natsu. But Natsu just punching Jalal back in the Tower of Heaven shattered a massive portion of that whole tower, and it's going to be way more physical strength than him just lifting up the slab.
Natsu has used his keen observational skills and indomitable willpower to predict their moves and defeat them. He's pretty clever in battle, which is surprising given how...
This is another thing too, is I mentioned it where they were at the point of when this video came out, because you have to bring up scaling, and they know what scaling is, and that's one of the things. I know I can't remember videos off the top of my head that they mentioned scaling. I think they do in one of the videos about Cell. And Natsu obviously was Spriggan level in Alvarez, and you have to be able to scale like all of the Spriggan off of Wall, who can access Ethereon, and they don't even mention Ethereon in this video. Whereas, like, I feel like if you had an equivalent like that in One Piece for Ace, they probably would have mentioned it, just based off of going through their videos and seeing like how they kind of assess stuff with One Piece versus how they assess stuff with Fairy Tail. But this is, again, this is another thing Natsu got past in Alvarez, and again, that's something that it's like, yeah, early on Natsu would just go through his magic super fast, but he can't, he doesn't do that anymore. He stopped doing that in that, like, there was a whole bit of it when Natsu was going up against Bakuo and Gaju was fighting Kareem. It's not really? Okay. Gotta pause for a second. I know this video is going to be a bit longer than I planned, but I feel like my commentary is what people are going to be mostly looking for. I was trying to think of what they even really mentioned for Ace, because I know Ace mostly has scaling. He doesn't have a lot of general feats.
Sheer inconceivable willpower. Though she died in childbirth, her last act was to give her newborn son his name, Porcus D. Ace.
Soon after, Ace was adopted by an old acquaintance of his father, Monkey D. and raised alongside Monkey D. and his childhood friend, Sabo.
Over time, Ace, Goofy, and Sabo grew very close, considering themselves brothers and
Yeah, I'm still trying to think of what exactly he's what is even their argument? Because like they didn't even mention the fact that Natsu will like he'll limit break once you give him enough fire. So it's like I feel like skipping over key things like Natsu can touch fire, and throwing fire attacks is relatively pointless. Because the thing is, like, Ace ate the Mara fruit, so Ace obviously is fire, but Ace is regular fire, like he's natural fire. Natsu's dragon fire. Regular fire isn't a factor for him at all. So the only thing that Ace can really do is hit him with physical attacks. And on top of that, Natsu has higher physical stats than him at the point of Alvarez. Because they don't really go too much into like scaling again. I know when I was talking about like Ethereon and Spriggan and stuff, but they don't even show like stuff like, oh well, Natsu should be at least physically strong as X, Y, or Z. They just use like a random feat for him. But I know they'll do that for other characters. For instance, obviously, like when you see, and this is one of the best ones that I like to use, is Makarov in his fully sized Titan form that we saw as like, you know, the full giant. He was like a mile or so tall, and Hades pulled him down in base relatively easily. So there's a good amount of physical strength fighters that should be just fine being able to contend with that, especially, you know, in Alvarez. So it's weird not to mention that.
No. Actually, that's referencing weather phenomena where plasma.
See, I know St. Elmo, but I know that primarily from when I read Air Gear back in high school.
Javelins made of pure fire and hurtles them through enemies, burning them inside and out.
He's like, what is that gonna do?
Firefly and Fiery Doll is a combination attack where he creates several small balls of green plasma which surround a foe.
See, they go more into Ace's abilities and less about a rough description of his character. When it came to Natsu, they spent way more time just giving a general backstory, and it's like they were trying just to be like, hey look, we do know a little about the character, and they just mentioned it. I don't know, with this one I always felt like they just didn't do a lot of research. I know with Urza and Zoro, that one's gonna annoy me too, even going back to it. More so than this one, because this one is like, I know obviously Natsu wins in their video, but it's like they don't even go into how really a non-factor of a fight this is. This isn't Natsu and Yamamoto, where it's like Yamamoto has like scaling and feats where I can see why people think he would win, but Ace just has no chance.
Hurt by other Logia users wielding an element with an inherent advantage over fire, such as magma or water.
And that's another thing too, is we know for a fact that Logias can be hurt by higher variations of similar attributes. So obviously lava hurting, or magma specifically, being able to hurt somebody that it turns into fire. Dragon fire is hotter than magma and lava, so assuming that this gunman, that's Van Augur, put some respect on that man. I've always liked Van Augur. Van Augur's pretty dope.
Likely be constructed of teak wood. To accomplish this, Ace would need to hit each ship with at least 15,000 pounds of force per square inch.
So getting hit by Ace would be like getting hit with a
See, that's a weird thing too that they do, is they'll like, they very exclusively go between like knowing how scaling works, and then in some videos they don't.
It's his insane willpower and endurance.
Like Death Battle to me has always been like the Fortnite of versus conversations, where it's like, it's neat to see when they come up with a fight that you don't expect, where it's like, oh, this will be funny to see when this fight comes out, just to see the commotion around it. But generally I don't think I've ever looked at one of their videos and been like, Yeah, they were really on the ball. I think the only one that I can think of when I watched it that I was like, actually they got this one was with Kirby. Kirby and Kid Buu, but like with Kirby, you just play the games. It's not like you have to watch a lot of the show. And you can honestly just look at Kirby at the last level of every game to kind of understand like Kirby's crazy levels. Like all you have to really do is know about a Warp Star, how fast Warp Star is, and then like look at the craziness whenever he fights the last boss of a game. So I'm gonna skip whatever there because I think they have an. Do they have an ad? I don't think. Yeah, they did Blue Apron. I don't have time for Blue Apron. I got a wife. I don't need Blue Apron to do stuff for me. Come on, get to it. This video is longer than I anticipated, but again, I feel like people wanted to more so see my breakdown rather than. Come on. There we go. I was gonna say video's been working fine. Don't give me a loading issue right now.
Give that back, or you'll have to deal with me.
I don't think Natsu would really care too much about that.
That's it. I'm gonna mess you up.
See, if there was more of a conflict logically between the two of them, I imagine it would be somehow there's like somebody makes a comment about, you know, what I heard this group is popular. They might even be better than the Whitebeard Pirates, and then Ace says some comment about the Fairy Tail Guild that Natsu overhears it, and he's like, okay, bet. And then that's more so rather than Natsu being like Batman and hiding on a roof to ward off thieves. See, why would Natsu would just eat that? Why is he trying to dodge it? And there we go, right there. That's another thing. Natsu hitting into him and him turning into fire. Natsu can touch him. Natsu can touch him. When did this fight, like the official like little sprites thing start? At like right around here, 15-20. So like 10 seconds ago, they are like 10 seconds in the fight, they already have an issue. Like Natsu dodging his first attack, it's like, why would he? Why would Natsu jump right into a Fire Dragon King move right away? And right there, that's another thing. Ace wouldn't be able just to stand there and take it. Dragon fire is not the same as regular fire. If lava, magma, is that much of a threat to him, he's not going to be trying to tank stuff that's way hotter than what he clearly can't handle. Fire Fist would not even come close to his Demolition Fist. See, why would Natsu even be worried about this? This is what I'm talking about. Like Natsu was in the explosions back with back when they fought Faust, and he's like, yeah, whatever. I don't see how you instantly don't just get to this point too and be like, yeah, Ace is fucked. Ace has no chance here. You can say try eating this and it wouldn't matter. Natsu would just eat it. Natsu would just eat it. Why would he just bother going through it? Again, like, they have him hit him. Yes, he can. That's the thing that bothers me. It's like, come on. Lightning Dragon Fire? What? Lightning Flame Dragon mode. Come on, guys. What did they call it? Lightning Dragon Fire mode? Hang on. Yeah, Lightning Dragon. That's one of those things again. It's like you can tell they did such little research. Nobody on their team probably seen Fairy Tail. And again, this was a while ago, so maybe things changed on their group, but it's like, come on. I know their big reasoning, which again, it's like, I know this is old, but like their video, like the fight was only 2 minutes. I like how it's like a 2-minute fight sequence, and I've got like a 35-minute breakdown of what's going on. I know their whole reasoning is like Natsu had lightning, which Ace couldn't handle. Ace didn't have defense, so Natsu can touch him. See, this is what I'm talking about too. They say Natsu, oh well, Natsu doesn't have a means to hit him or hurt him. It's like, yes, he does. See, what I'm talking about. Their whole thing of like even an argument is Ace's intangible form, but Natsu can touch him because Natsu can touch fire. Come on.
Oh, thanks. Natsu has had far more
I think it's also kind of funny when they the length of the match is 2 minutes. They mentioned Fire Dragon King mode. Natsu doesn't use Fire Dragon King mode. Natsu doesn't use Dragon Force. But Natsu uses Lightning Flame Dragon mode, which is like Natsu using his first of 3 different power-ups that he can use. So it's like, even in their video, it's like, Natsu completely destroys him, and the only reason that they even had a fight up until then is like, well, Natsu can't hit Ace, but he can. So it's like, if they just knew the actual mechanics of how this fight would go down, and that's it. It's like, if they knew that's like Natsu ends it on the first hit and Ace dies. I always just found that funny, and it's like, I know the other ones are bad. They're also really bad. Funny enough, they have Gray versus S Death, and they completely ignore all the general advantages they talk about Natsu having here, but they don't have that with Gray, which is really weird. And then Urza and Zoro, again, it's like they just barely go over any of Urza's actual feats. They use like Urza's, like the fastest Urza is, and they bring up Urza in base playing pool with bullets in a scene that takes place before the series starts, because it's before Bisca ever joins the guild when she's still Moulin Rogue. I always thought that just has really funny. Is it Rogue or Rouge? I think it's Moulin Rogue. But yeah, goofy video. I haven't watched it since it came out. I don't think I've watched this since it came out. Let me look really fast. I think it came out 6 years ago. Man, I got my time off. I thought it was 8 years ago. But yeah, 6 years ago, obviously during Alvarez, I guess 8 years ago, it'd be 2016, which was, I was on deployment. So it was oh gosh. I'm trying to remember the exact dates. Yeah, it was after my deployment, because I remember, one of the reasons I remember specifically too was there was a point on my deployment where after not having internet connection for a while, I came back, and right where the manga was when I was able to kind of just get an understanding of events at that point was when Laxus beat Wall and got the Red Lightning. So that's how I know that, like, at this point Natsu had Spriggan scaling and the Ethereon stuff with Wall already existed. Obviously Fire Dragon King mode was something they already mentioned. Did they even go into Ikusa Tsunagi like when Natsu punched him? I don't think so. Do they? I don't think they even mentioned that. Again, that's one of those things they mentioned Jackal, but they don't really talk about any of like the actual like standout feats. But anyway, tell me your thoughts about this. Did you watch when it came out? Do you for some reason disagree? Do you think Ace stands a chance? Obviously, like in the current form, Natsu runs numbers on all of One Piece. There's nobody in One Piece that can stop him at all. Base Natsu completely throttles Gear 5 Luffy. We'll save that for another video. I've done it before, but I'll gladly do a more extensive breakdown at some point. I'm going to try and get this Urza and Zoro one. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it today. I might do it this weekend. I still have the tab up, so we'll probably do it this weekend. But for now, obviously, like, this one for me was, again, you can see all the errors in them trying to talk about Natsu that shows they don't really know anything about Fairy Tail. Like I said, calling him a mercenary and a bounty hunter, Lightning Dragon Fire mode, mentioning Dragon Force but not really using it at all, mentioning Fire Dragon King mode but not mentioning, or mentioning Fire Dragon King mode but not using it at all. And funny enough too, that they're just like, yeah, Natsu only has to go first stage up and he pretty much one-shots Ace, and that's it. Like, they're like, even in their video, the only thing Ace has is intangibility, but Ace doesn't have that against somebody like Natsu, because again, Natsu can physically touch fire because he is a fire Dragon Slayer wizard, and Slayer wizards can touch their respective attributes. It's one of the perks about them, because Slayer wizards are made to counter not just their type of thing, like Dragon Slayers are against dragons. A Fire Dragon Slayer is also made to counter fire dragons, but also the entire fire archetype and anything within it. So, just like, say, you have an Ice Devil Slayer, ice itself and all ice abilities, and vice versa. No matter what attribute you pick, That's why they are almost pointless to put against Slayers or people of the same attribute, because they have all these different advantages against them that just make it a very unfair matchup. But anyway, other than that, comment below, tell me your thoughts about this. Obviously, this was something that I feel like it's more fun to kind of like re-look back at, because it's so bad. It's really bad. And the Gray and Estes one, I think, is only 3 or 4 years old, I want to say. I know that whenever they get to another one, just based off of consistency, unless they've got a new person on the team or somebody in their team actually watched Fairy Tail for the first time, it's going to be just as bad, and they're not going to have any actual input of logic on the series. They're going to probably look at like respect threads on Reddit or something, or like they just Google stuff and look at the Wikipedia. But anyway, other than that, like I said, comment below, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.